This episode of The Edge is brought to you by Audible.com, offering more than 180,000 titles for smartphone, tablet, and desktop. To get a free audiobook of your choice and help Trek.fm at the same time, visit audibletrial.com/trekfm. And also by Enterprise in Space, an international program of the nonprofit National Space Society. Find out how you can help science and education and become a virtual crew member aboard the NSS Enterprise Orbiter by visiting enterpriseinspace.org. And if you want to join the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode, join the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. Just type BABEL into the Facebook search field. We look forward to seeing you there.
You're listening to Trek FM.
What have you done out there on the edge of Federation space?
Welcome to another episode of The Edge, Trek FM's dedicated podcast to Star Trek Discovery. I'm your host, Amy Nelson, and this week we have Brandi Jackola and Heather Barker. Now, Brandi, you are one of the hosts of Live from the Edge. Why don't you tell our listeners about the show in case they aren't familiar with it, but they should be?
Oh, I wish they would be, because we have a great time on Live from the Edge. We broadcast on Monday nights on YouTube live with our reactions to the most recent episode of Discovery. It's always Monday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Mountain, 8 p.m. Central. I'm covering all of those time zones. And you're always welcome to join the discussion live. We have a YouTube chat that we are constantly watching, even though we may not get to every single comment. And then it is released as a podcast the following morning. So Tuesday morning, it's still out as a podcast if you are not able to join us live. And basically, it's me and it's Bruce Gibson and often a special guest host as well. And we just talk about our feelings about the last episode of Discovery. So it's not actually happening while there are no new episodes airing, but as soon as we start again on January 7th, there will be Live from the Edge again, which is going to be interesting because I'm going to be in Florida at the time. So here's hoping it works.
Yeah. And Heather, welcome back to The Edge and on Trek FM. You are just becoming a regular with us.
Yeah, I like it. It's good company over here. So I love coming back and talking, whether it's Discovery or Enterprise. I'm loving it all. So thanks for having me back.
Yes. Well, I host Postcards from the Edge, which is a podcast that reports the fan response to each episode of Discovery. So I have my pulse on what's being discussed each week. However, one topic's come up quite frequently that because Discovery is not episodic, people aren't seeing the themes that they so easily recognize in one episode of Star Trek from the past. So I gathered the girls together and we are going to discuss these themes that we've seen throughout the first 9 episodes of Discovery. So ladies, has it been difficult for you to recognize themes in Discovery because it's so serialized? Brandi?
No.
Yeah.
No, I don't think it has been difficult at all, but that's just my personal feeling, my personal opinion. And I view things very differently from other people because I am always emotionally invested. I can't not be emotionally invested in Star Trek. And even if it's an episode I may not particularly like, I'm still always emotionally invested. So that, I feel everything as it's happening and I can just see correlations all over the place, even if others can't. But that's what we're here to do, is to show everybody that there are those correlations.
Yeah. Heather, are you recognizing some themes from Star Trek?
I think I recognize the themes as Star Trek before anything else. And I've kind of fought for that over on my podcast, Disco Trek, but because they've been there. And I don't like hearing that Discovery isn't Star Trek, because it absolutely is. And I think that emotional investment point that Brandi made is a very good one. I kind of want to talk to somebody that doesn't have that emotional attachment and see what their perspective would be. You know, I've talked to different people, and I've talked to people who don't like Discovery. But for me, it's tried and true Star Trek. And so I definitely see these themes that we're going to talk about tonight. They were there from the first episode. So I'm pretty excited to give them some special attention.
Yeah. Well, not only did I want to discuss themes within Discovery, but I wanted to make a personal connection with these themes. Because for me, that's why I love Star Trek. Like, it's how can I relate it to my life and how can I be better? So I'm bringing Counselor Troy to the house. Woot woot.
Woo! Bring it.
So I've asked everyone to think about some personal experiences in their lives and how they connect to these themes. Now, you might be asking, what are these themes that we are so randomly talking about? Well, they are logic versus emotion, power and manipulation, fear versus peace and safety, and sacrifices for your passions. So the first theme, it just seems so evident in every iteration of Star Trek, is logic versus emotions. I mean, we get that right from the original series with Spock. And in Discovery, we see it as well with Burnham. And she is confronting this logic emotions in almost every episode. I mean, we know with her upbringing on Vulcan by Sarek and Amanda, but then she has a human nature. So Burnham is balancing these two opposing forces in her life. So, Brandi, give us what you see this theme is and how you've internalized it into your life.
There are many examples of this in Discovery, especially where Michael is concerned. And the one that I think is the one that struck me the most in the series, which also was one of the most intense, was after, in Battle at the Binary Stars, Michael is thrown in the brig for her attempted mutiny. And meanwhile, they've started fighting the Klingon ship of the dead. And they keep getting hit. The poor Shinzo keeps getting hit. And she's talking to a crewman, who's down, basically stationed in the brig. And the hull is hit and destroyed in that area. She is saved by containment force fields, but that crewman is just sucked out into space. Now that's going to rattle pretty much anybody. But she's knocked unconscious. When she wakes up, she just is like, okay, I'm dead. I'm not going to try anything. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to wait to die. The containment's going to fail. There's nothing I can do. And then Sarek does his Katra joining mind meld and comes to her. And basically does a very illogical thing, in my opinion. He, of course, explains it as he doesn't like a waste of resources, but he bolsters her self-confidence and tells her she has more to do. There's more she can do. And she even says, you were never one to bolster my self-esteem. And he basically inspires her that if she's not going to stay alive for herself, stay alive to help others. And so then she just logic argues the computer into getting her out of that brig. That is one of my favorite scenes in the entire series, is her discussing with the computer as to why the computer should let her out of the brig.
Yeah.
As far as my own life, I was having trouble coming up with a particular example because I am not a logic-based person at all. I am emotions first all the time. It's just the way I'm wired, which is not to say that I don't think about my actions or anything like that. But I thought of something today when I was every once in a while, I will just have something trigger a memory from my past of something that was really horrifically embarrassing or terrible or something I did wrong, and I will get mired in that memory. And my wonderful husband said, well, try this. Try visualizing a red ribbon tying you to this thing in the past that you can no longer change, that's only giving you grief. And then make a cutting motion with your arm and just cut through it and detach it from yourself.
Wow.
And I said, you mean like physically use my arm to cut it? And he said, yes. And just try it. And it worked. And so I've gotten to the point where I don't have to do an actual cutting motion, but when one of those memories starts intruding, I say, there's nothing I can do about it. There's nothing I can change. I've learned from this experience already. Stop thinking about it. That's taken years to perfect, but I've managed to get there. And so I use a form of logic to keep those things from just ruining my life, basically. Because you can't fix your mistakes. All you can do is learn from them.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that. I am so going to use that.
Please do. Please do. Spread it around. More people can use the technique. It's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, Heather, what about you?
I wish I had something as good as that.
Oh, no comparisons. No.
Man. Yeah, logic versus emotion. This is why I felt that there was Star Trek there from the very beginning, because we see this, with the whole situation with Michael Burnham and the mutiny of the Shenzhou. It wasn't logical. It wasn't just logical. It wasn't just emotional. That was like a war between the two. And seeing all of this happen, she talked to Sarek. She was doing what she thought was the logical, correct thing to do by proposing that they, give the Klingon ship a Vulcan hello. And in turn, Georgiou is like, no, I'm not doing that. And so at that point, that's when those emotions took over. And she did something, shocking. Like I remember watching that and just being like, oh my gosh, like this is what's happening. It kind of blew me away because I wasn't expecting that at all. I think none of us were expecting that to happen. And we see this throughout the entire first half of the season, the struggle. And I would say for the most part, probably from episode 1 to, 4 or 5, Michael Burnham was like my favorite character because I am so much like her. I'm also extremely emotional, but throughout my life, I've had to learn that I cannot always act on my emotions. I have to think logically in order to not get hurt or not make a mistake that I'll regret later. So as I've matured over time, I've had to learn to use those two things together. And so Michael I was like, that's me. It's like, that's me on screen. And that is why I was saying, Discovery is my Star Trek because I actually see myself in that character. Over the episodes, I've actually decided now that I think I'm a lot more like Stamets. And I think I'm not specific. I'm not like sure why that is, but I think that Stamets too, especially in the last episode, we see him battling between emotion and logic. He's trying to do what is logical to save the ship. And yet he is putting himself in a position where he could die. He could lose his partner. And we see, the beautiful scenes between Stamets and Culber and that just raw, powerful emotion of, I love you. And that may be the last time that I ever tell you that. Like, I think a lot of us had that feeling that he knew that something might happen. So I don't know. Overall, I feel like this is probably one of the strongest themes in Discovery. And like I said, for me personally, I mean, I don't know how personal we want to get, but I don't have specifics as far as my past life of things that have happened to me where I've had to kind of war against the two. But right now I'm going through a really terrible situation where I've just built a house with my fiance. We've been here for 4 months and now my fiance has ended our relationship. That puts me in an extremely volatile emotional state because this is a home I just built. I thought I was going to be in for a long time. And now my life has been completely uprooted and it's terrifying. And so emotionally, like I'm experiencing all the emotions, anger, sadness, shock. I don't know, shock's an emotion. But logically, like, thank goodness I have been able to grasp this logic. And I appreciate Michael Burnham being on television right now to help me through this. I can think logically that, okay, I've ended a relationship before. I was married in the past, so I've had to move out of a house. I have to sell a house this time, so it's a little more stressful, but I made it.
Right.
I made it through. So despite the fact that I am a bit emotionally compromised at the moment, my logical side is saying, all right, these are the steps that we need to take. We're just going to follow these steps. We're going to take it day by day, and we're going to be okay in the end. And I really do look to the character of Michael Burnham, because even though she is so emotional, she's exquisitely logical as well. And she may be one or the other more so at a different time, but I'm able to just look at that character and be like, okay, I can do this. I can be like her, and I can make it through what I'm going through now.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting that we all are talking about Michael Burnham, and just from the get-go, from the very first episode, because I was thinking of Michael Burnham with her struggle between logic and emotion at the first episode, The Vulcan Hello. And what caught me was when she was in the learning pod when she was little, and, they were asking the questions, and then the questions was, well, where was the last Klingon attack? And that's where she lost her parents. And so to bring on that emotion, and then she was too slow to answer the questions because her emotions was taking over. And Sarek, I love this quote. Sarek tells young Michael, when emotion brings us ghosts from the past, only logic can root us in the present. Mm-hmm. And I just thought, wow, that is such an amazing, just sort of what you were talking about, Brandi, with, you can't change the past, and so live in the present and, help us to cut that, learn from it, and move on. One example in my life that has always stood out is my mother. She's a single mom. She raised me, and she's the one, she's my Sarek. Like, she's very, very logical. And sometimes it was painful for me. My experience that just has always kept me thinking, okay, I need to be logical. I was 16 and maybe 2 months with my driver's license. And I was driving home on West Temple, as you know, Brandi. And It was a rainy, dark night in the winter. And I was coming home late from my job, and I couldn't see. And the lights were out, and I didn't know. And I went through this intersection, and this guy totally hit me and spun my car around. I'm 16 years old.
Terrifying.
And so I'm like, oh my gosh. So I pull over to the side, and I'm like crying. What happened? I didn't even know what happened. And this guy who hit me comes over, starts screaming at me like it's my fault. And I'm just a little 16-year-old.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like all emotional, don't know what to do. And back in the day, had to find a payphone. So I call up my mom. Thankfully, she taught me always carry a quarter with you. So I called up my mom. I'm in tears. Mom, I'm in this accident. She's like, well, stop crying, get your insurance, and call the police. And she was so brutal. I was like, I couldn't believe how harsh she was speaking to me. No emotion, but that's what needed to happen. I needed to stop with the crying and take care of business, and that has stayed with me forever. I think she was so harsh and so mean, but then when I look at it, she was being logical. She was teaching me a very valuable lesson that now's not the time to have your emotions, because things had to get done. So,
oh man,
my poor mother. I gave her grief, but I love her for it. Oh goodness. Well, our next theme, which I think is very evident, is power and manipulation. And when I think about these universal ideas, Captain Lorca and Cole come to mind. They both use these tactics when getting what they want. I think the verdict is still out on Lorca's true intentions. He says he wants to win the war at all costs, but it's clear he wants to remain captain for what seems to be another purpose. Is he mapping out space anomalies? What's his hidden agenda? Cole, on the other hand, seems to be more transparent. He wants to unite the Klingon Empire, but with him as the leader, it's obvious he will use any method necessary, including killing his own kind if they don't follow him. Now, when have you guys noticed Lorca or Cole or anyone else using power and manipulation in Star Trek Discovery? And have you seen it or used it in your life? Brandi, let's start with you.
Well, we see power manipulation from Lorca at the get-go. I mean, before we even actually see him, he is pulling the strings to get Michael's shuttle to where he can conveniently rescue it and bring her on board. And he even says to her when he's having that first real conversation with her after she defends herself in the commissary, mess hall, whatever you want to call it. And he says, you know, I don't like to see waste. So he has that same sort of mindset in regards to her abilities. So he'd read her file, had reread her file. He even said that in conversation, and he knew he wanted her there. And so he created all of the circumstances for that to happen because she was transferred without notice, which is not customary. Mm-hmm. Her shuttle changed course in the middle of their journey. Mm-hmm. I mean, he planned that from the beginning because he wanted her there and he got his wish and he puts her to work immediately. He knows exactly what he's going to do with her, but he can't let her think that he's controlling her. And so he makes it sound like, you know, you're going to be working on this ship because I say so. I don't care what your preferences are. And so he's making it sound like it's your duty, or, you know, or you can go back and wait for in the brig. So he doesn't actually say that because he thinks if he puts her back in the brig that people will die from her defending herself again. Mm-hmm. He doesn't say that last part, but, so yeah, he's manipulating that situation from the very start. And I am not 100% sure that his intentions are malevolent in any way, but I think he is a man who knows exactly what he wants and he plans out meticulously exactly how he's going to get it. And God help anyone who gets in his way.
Right.
So, you know, that can be very intimidating, but at the same time, you know, he's done things that no other ship in Starfleet could do. So,
right.
So where is the balance? I don't know yet. But as far as my own life, I'm not the kind of person that likes to use manipulation because I have been manipulated pretty much most of my life. My grandmother, my mother's mother, my mother was an only child. And my grandmother was the oldest of 6 children. And so she was basically the one in control because her mother, this was before anyone knew what bipolar disorder was, which my grandmother had in spades. And so she was very controlling. She controlled that family. She controlled my mother. When my mother got married, it was against her mother's wishes.
Wow.
And the only reason that she even let it happen is she realized, oh, I can continue to control her. And now I've got him to control. And when they have children, I'll have that to control. It was always about control. And the funny thing is, it makes her sound like some sort of tyrant. And sometimes she was. But her weapon of choice was guilt. Mm. She made everything an injury to her. Mm. Everything. Including, but not limited to, choosing the way that we dress, no matter how much we would get made fun of at school.
Wow.
And there was, I remember when I was 19 years old and she was in a nursing home because, you know, we just didn't have the ability to take care of her health needs anymore. And I went to visit her on a regular basis, and I would wear what I wanted. I was wearing a pair of jeans, and even lying there in that bed, she looked at me and she says, "Why do you want to hurt me by wearing those pants? Why do you want to do that? Why do you want to look like that?" So until the end of her life, that woman terrorized me and my sisters. And of course, to my mother, I remember several holidays like Thanksgiving and Christmas where she just made my mother cry with her beration. And is beration a word? Berating? So, and my mother would just be trying to get lunch or dinner ready or whatever, and she'd just be shaking and crying. And I hated my grandmother for that. Mm-hmm. I hated her for that. You can hate and love someone at the same time, I found out through her.
Yes.
So I'm not the kind of person that ever tries manipulation, because I know what it feels like. And luckily my mom, when she realized that's the same thing that she was doing, she was starting to use guilt as a weapon. She stopped doing it. Every once in a while she might have a relapse, and I'm like, "Mom, guilt tripping. Come on." Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But it almost never happens now. So
I'm very glad to hear that cycle has been broken, because so many times it isn't.
It isn't, yeah.
And I'm just going to jump in real quick and hope that my family members aren't listening. But similarly, I had a grandmother that every compliment was a backhanded compliment. Mm-hmm. And it was this guilt. And it's like, "Well, you look good. If only you would do this, or something like that." And then my stepmom started doing the same thing. And my older sister sometimes does it. And I'm like, "No, we got to stop that. Just give a compliment. And if you give a compliment, it doesn't diminish you." That's how I read it, Yeah. And yeah, it's not about you. And I'm not wearing a pair of jeans for you, Yeah. And that whole manipulation and playing the victim and trying to get what you want is, so kudos to your mom and for you for not continuing that cycle, because I have seen it continue.
Yeah, it's a hard thing. My mom was strong enough once she was no longer under the influence of her mother to know that something was wrong and find out how to fix it. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, my mom's great. She was way stronger than she knew. And she didn't really know that until she wasn't tied down by her mother anymore.
Yeah.
It's kind of, I don't know. I don't know enough people with a similar story to say if this is true or not. I feel like that kind of behavior, I hope it's going out of style. I feel like it's very common in older women, and had been a pattern, because in the past, our culture now is very different how we dress. There's so many types of expression when it comes to how we dress versus, the 1950s, where it was women wore a dress and men wore a suit or, pants or whatnot. Mm-hmm. And I feel like during those times, and even before, Victorian, all the way back, there was just such an emphasis on what it was to look like a lady. I'm putting that in air quotes. And especially with women, because we are programmed to focus so much on what we look like, and how we dress. I feel like that was a pattern that just existed for so long. And like hearing about your mom, Brandi, like that gives me hope, because this has been passed down to you now, because you're not going to be like that. Like she was able to see, okay, no, that's wrong. That behavior is wrong. And now you've seen that. And then I hope that, as we bring in new generations, that will dissipate. And I wish that I knew more, women with moms and could really think about how this works on a scale, at least here in the United States. I'm pretty lucky that my mom never did that. She actually put herself down more. And so then that kind of translated into how I thought about myself. I'm glad that she never made those comments to me, but I know that her mother made comments like that to her. And maybe that's why she didn't do it to me. I would walk out in an outfit that these days, at 18, it probably wasn't something that I would support me wearing today as I'm 36, I look back and I'm like, I don't think I really should have worn that to that date. But my mother never stopped me. She never said, I think you need to reconsider that skirt or anything like that. So I really hope that, as your family has kind of learned that that's the wrong decision, that maybe other families out there, do the same thing. I know I've gone off on a total tangent there.
No, that's good. It's a good thing.
It's as women, I think it's important because it's something, and I'm sure it happens with men too. And there's ideals of masculinity, and so fathers pass down, what a man is or what a man should look like. And I have male friends that I know struggle with that, but I feel like maybe there's a little less of it, but I just don't know. I'm not a parent. And I don't know enough parents to really feel that. Man, Lorca, guys, I started off kind of having a crush on Lorca.
Right.
Jason Isaacs is a studly guy.
Yes, he is.
He's so cool.
I think he's a great captain. He's got great command and great presence. When we met him originally, and there was a lot of talk about, is he going to be a bad guy? Because that's what he's known for, is playing bad guys. So we're like, okay, is he going to be the bad guy captain? What's going to happen? And we meet him and we're like, I don't know. Like, what does he have ulterior motives? What's going on here? And guys, I got manipulated in this whole thing, like watching Discovery and following Lorca. And I'm like, oh, I like Lorca now. I was so manipulated by Lorca that in the last episode, Into the Forest I Go, I sat there not even realizing what he was doing to Stamets.
Right.
Like, I thought, oh, well, he's a nice guy now.
Yeah, look at him doing all this research for Stamets. How considerate.
Yeah. I'm like, and then I start listening to podcasts and I really start thinking about it. And I really don't like him anymore. And it's even that is tough because you know what? I want to like him. There are aspects of the character that I really do like, but then this manipulation and seeing what he's doing. And to me, it just feels really kind of dirty. And that's what I don't like. And that's, we don't know what his intentions are, right? So there's just that hanging question. We don't know if he's a good guy. We don't know if he's a bad guy. But props to the writers here too, to have written these stories so well that I myself was playing along, like Stamets. Oh, I didn't know you cared, Captain.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Man. Oh, and it's just like, it's even still, like, I still feel like I'm being manipulated to want to like him, even though I don't like him. That's a really tough thing. And quite frankly, like, that's the story of my relationships in life. There's just something there. And I think that most of the time we're not aware of being manipulated until it's too late.
Yes.
Until it's over. And I can only speak for myself personally. My father left before I was even born. My biological father. I have a stepfather who is my dad. But that kind of set a tone for me psychologically somewhere. He was not present in my life very much. And so, I'm 36 now. So throughout my life, I've always tried to figure out how that has influenced my relationship with men specifically, because I have had really great, family members, my grandfathers, my stepdad. I love him. He's my dad, but I try to figure that out and how it all plays in. Despite that history, I am still like incredibly trusting, with all of my relationships, really. It doesn't matter gender, but just I'm focusing on the man thing because you would think, oh, her father abandoned her, so she may have these trust issues ingrained. I still always try to trust people and assume that someone is giving me their best. I'm very gullible because of that. And so I am so easily manipulated to the point that I watch a TV show and, and like play along. So that's one of the things that Star Trek does really well, is makes us self-reflect. And I have really had to sit here and think, okay, wow, I see this character. I see the manipulation that he's doing. I fell for the manipulation, and how does this like play into my life? And then I think about the relationships I've been in, and I'm not going to go into detail about the ways I've been manipulated or anything, but it's just, you're being a trusting person. It happens. And, at the end of the day, it's not a good thing. And I, like Brandi, I'm not a manipulative person, and I never will be, because of how often I have been manipulated. But it's one of the reasons that I love Discovery, is because I can see this connection, and then I can go through and kind of look at how a character like that may have been in my life at some point. Just like I can see myself in Michael Burnham, I can kind of find the Lorcas in my life and really understand that, I stayed with that person for so long because I didn't realize they were manipulating me. And even though I thought maybe something wasn't right, I still really wanted to like them. Like, that's exactly what my connection is with that character. And so it just kind of all clicks together. And that's good Star Trek, when you can do that and take something like that and apply it to your life that way.
Yeah, there was, and I love this author. His name is Robert Greene, Greene. And he's written some amazing books. And I started reading them in part because I'm like, how is it that people are getting this power in their life, and just power for like me. I'm not trying to be power hungry and, control and manipulate, but he has written actually quite a few books. One of them is that I'm going to talk about is 48 Laws of Power. And it's a very interesting book because he talks about historical examples. Well, he has 48 laws, and he gives historical examples of dictators or people, just examples of people using this law, and then what happens when you break the law, like some of the consequences if you don't follow the law. So it's like a good historical perspective, and you're learning like how people get power, and in part like how to take control of your life. So I found a couple of laws that I wanted to just sort of bring into Star Trek Discovery. Now, Law 26 says, keep your hands clean. Use others as scapegoats to disguise your involvement. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is exactly when Lorca all of a sudden decides to follow Starfleet protocol and not go after Admiral Cornwell, right? I'm going to keep my hands clean. You see, I'm following the rules. And that's this, as law of power, when you're pretending to, keep your hands clean. Law 43 says, work on the hearts and minds of others, and to seduce others into wanting to move in your direction. And that's exactly what he did with Stamets. When he made Stamets want to do the 133 jumps, when he was playing into Stamets's curiosity, and search and this discovery, his scientific discovery, like now Stamets wanted to follow. I mean, that's such a power play,
Master manipulator.
It is, right?
Absolutely.
Another part of that law is seducing others by operating on their individual psychologies and weaknesses, and soften them by working their emotions and what they fear. And I thought Lorca does this with Burnham when he tells Burnham that you can now have a purpose. You can rejoin Starfleet. You can be with my crew. Like, you're not going to be alone. And you can have this voice in Starfleet on the ship. I mean, that was played directly to her psychological issues that she was going through, being an outcast, and her whole life was Starfleet. And here Lorca brings that in to manipulate her into, joining the crew and doing what he wants. I just
he does that with Stamets too, because he kind of tries to play to, Stamets' love of science and, exploration. And that's basically what he's promising is, let's do this and then let's go see what's out there. And he's playing right into that. And it makes me sick to a point. To do that, man.
Yeah, that's Law 43, work on the hearts and minds of others. That's, Now, Cole, I think, is also, but he's more transparent. And so for Cole, I was thinking Law 27, play on people's need to believe to create a cult-like following. Like people want to believe in something, and Cole is using this, let's unite the Klingon Empire, right? And so he's giving them this cause. He's giving them this new faith. And he's purposefully, he's so vague about it. He doesn't even really say exactly how he's going to do it. Well, at least to us. We don't see what he, maybe he's being more specific, but it's very vague. It's very cult-like. We're going to bring the Klingons together again. And that is just playing on people's need to believe in something greater. And Cole does that just effortlessly, I think.
Well, he was very smart in that regard because T'Kuvma had already started that.
Yes.
And Cole realized, no, this is an opportunity for me to slip in because T'Kuvma was going to be a true believer.
Yes.
And Cole wanted the true believers, but he wanted to be in charge of them. He didn't want to be one of them. Yeah. And all he was after is power. And at some point, you've got to sit down and wonder, and then what? Mm-hmm. Once you have everyone under your thumb, then what? Mm-hmm. What do you do now? Do you just go out and conquer everything? And once you've conquered everything, then what? Mm-hmm. What are you creating? What are you building? Nothing. You're just gathering power.
Mm-hmm. And now he's gone. I think that one of the other master manipulators here is L'Rell. Oh, and I cannot go into talking about the relationship with Tyler. I talked about that somewhere else. So, sexual assault aside, she's certainly playing that part with everyone. Yes. With Cornwell right now, I don't believe for a second that she's out to defect. I don't know what her plan is, but her plan is about her. And it was never for Cole. It was never for Cornwell. It was never to do anything with Lorca. She's got a plan, and she is doing some crafty manipulation to get wherever she's going to go, which I'm interested to see. I really enjoyed L'Rell up until that last episode, and the relationship with Tyler. So that's going to be a struggle for me now to figure out, but she's certainly manipulating him as well. Yeah. So I think we're going to see a lot more of this power and manipulation theme.
So much.
The rest of the season, it's certainly extremely prominent, just like the logic versus emotion.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about, I think, something very near and dear to all of us is this idea of fear versus finding peace and feeling safe. And I think this theme is totally fleshed out with Saru and his character. And we learn early on that he is a race that senses death and fear. And he's in this constant state of fear because he is a prey race and has the instincts of always being hunted. And that to me is so scary. Like, have you been in a situation where you have felt this fear or been constantly afraid, Brandi?
Oh, every day of my childhood.
Oh.
Every single day from the time I could walk and talk. I was obviously different looking from other children. And of course, children attack everything that is not exactly like them. And when I was about 3 or 4, before I was in school, and I could read at a very young age. My older sister would come home and play school with me and teach me the things that she learned. And so I was reading by the time I was 4. And around that time, there were it wasn't preschool because preschool wasn't as big when I was a kid, at least not in our area, but there were church activities that, we were sent to and things like that. And that was where it started. It actually started at church activities. She's different, gang up on her. Then when I started school, same thing. There was no safe place. There was no safe place. If I stepped outside the house, there was a target on me immediately. And so basically, sorry.
Oh, it's breaking my heart.
It's something that made me stronger. And so it's not something that I want to discard, that I wish had never happened, although I wish it had never happened. But the lessons it taught me were invaluable. But every day of my life was going out in public and wondering who was going to attack me, who was going to make fun of me, who was going to make me cry. And I would play sick as much as I could, just so that I didn't have to go out and face that, because it came from every direction in my life. And you would think, the one place you should be safe is church, and I wasn't even safe at church. Kids would make fun of me right in front of church leaders, and they'd just be like, "Oh, you guys." Yeah. And nothing was ever done to stop it. And I was very depressed as a child and as a teenager. And there were times where I thought, I'm just going to step in front of this bus because I'm just so tired of this fight. And I never had the what I considered at that time strength or courage to do that. And I'm grateful for that. But there were so many days that I wished I was dead, that it was just, I was always afraid. So there you go, Heather. I'm the one that broke first.
That constant fear is so real. And I see it with these kids, and I've taught everything from middle school to high school, and I haven't seen it in elementary school just because I'm not an elementary school teacher. But that whole idea, and I really try, if I see any type of just meanness, I stop it, because it's so, I was picked on, not continually, but I'm like, it's not going to happen in my classroom at all because of that. Oh,
I wish I'd had teachers like you, Amy.
Heather?
Oh, man. I had trouble with Saru because, off the top of my head, I couldn't find a time in my life where I had constantly lived in fear to that point. And I've had some life experiences, so you would think that I would. I spent a few years of my high school career being molested by a teacher. But along with that, talk about power and manipulation, I didn't fully understand what was going on. So there wasn't always a fear, because he was acting like he was trying to take care of me. It's some really messed up stuff, guys.
Yeah. It is.
When I can look back at it now and see it for what it was, and understand that even though I it wasn't a cognizant fear of, what's going to happen tomorrow. There was an underlying fear of that. It's hard to explain. But I also missed a lot of school because I didn't obviously want to go to school and have things happen to me. It took a while for me to really realize the power of a fear like that. And even on short term, Saru has lived with this his entire life. And I haven't lived my entire life in that kind of a state of fear. Even with my experiences with having anxiety, and I have low level anxiety. I don't take medication or anything like that. There's been a lot of discussion of how having that anxiety and never knowing if you're going to have a panic attack or something like that, how that's extremely comparable to Saru's life. My personal situation that I mentioned earlier happened very recently within the last week. And I got to tell you guys, I came very close to making a tweet that I finally understand how Saru felt, because in, 20 minutes, my life got turned upside down and I lost all control over my future, or I felt that I had lost all control because my relationship has been pulled out from under me and my home. I can't afford to keep my brand new home by myself, which is going to throw me into home. I say homelessness. I have confidence that I will find a home. I have a beautiful, wonderful, supportive community of people that have offered me a room if I need it. So I will find a place to go. But that very sudden push into the unknown is absolutely terrifying. And I've had to go back to that Michael Burnham and borrow some of the logic there to kind of bring me back to feeling a sense of peace. But I definitely can understand now how Saru has felt. I may not have experienced fear my entire life or my entire childhood. I have experienced it enough. And again, that's why I just think that it's a true show of how well Discovery is being done. Despite what anyone's complaints are, Saru and him, and he's just such a great character that you can look at this. You can look at the fear he experiences and find ways where you've experienced the same thing, even if it's not your whole lifetime, even if it's just a week or high school or a childhood. I mean, I think that we all can find a place where we have experienced this loss of control and being thrown into the unknown and just being afraid of what's going to happen and not knowing. I have a much greater respect for the character now after my recent experience. And that's from a week ago, a few weeks ago, saying, oh no, I haven't really felt that way. But when you really take the time to reflect on your life, and then have random things happen to you, it starts to make sense. And so I have a lot of respect for Saru.
Yeah. Well, not being constantly in fear, but it's always been in the back of my mind, being raised in the church and how family is so predominant and that is the end all and be all. And, to be a wife and to be a mother. This is a tough segment right now, guys. Yeah. But my fear is not being in a committed relationship. And, through my 20s, I thought, I'm still young. I was, going to school. Things were occupying. In my 30s, I was starting my career. I'm still young. And now I'm in my 40s, mid 40s. And now it's sort of hitting me that it's like, gosh, I may not have a child. I may not be a mother that was supposed to be the pinnacle of femaleness. Mm-hmm. And now not even being in a relationship. And one of my friends pointed out, it's like, you've never really been in a long-term relationship. And I think, gosh, why is that? Is it me? I mean, where does it break down? Because I think, well, I'm doing good. I feel like I've accomplished so much. I can set almost any goal and reach it. I mean, to getting my master's degree, to losing weight, to like so many things that I feel so accomplished and that I feel like I'm a nice, kind person. but yet obtaining this relationship with a significant other seems to be this huge enigma that I can't grasp. And that fear of just, am I going to be alone for the rest of my life, it's there. It's not in the forefront. It doesn't guide my life, but it's just that underlying fear that's with me and that has been with me. And that's tough, it's tough.
It is tough. And I even with Saru, like, despite knowing this about him, it's like he works on a starship. And so that fear, like, it doesn't always have to be something that's like right there, dominating the character. And I think that your story, Amy, is a good example of how, that fear is there all of the time. It's an underlying fear and it's something prevalent in your life. But it doesn't seem to control your life.
Well, we do get to see Saru finally find some peace. And I like this juxtaposition of him being fearful and then finally having peace. And I wanted to ask you, where is it that you have peace? Is it with a person, or is it a place? Is it a state of mind? Like, where is it that you don't have fear? Brandi?
My husband.
I knew you were going to say that.
My husband is the only person on this planet that knows absolutely everything about me and still loves me anyway, and still likes me anyway. And, yeah, as far as the whole child thing, I'm barren. I can't have children, but even so, I don't want to be a mother. I don't have that instinct, that feeling that my biological clock was ticking. I never could imagine myself as a mother. And Dave and I are happy with us and our cat, and we don't feel like anything is missing. But no matter what is happening in my life, no matter what ups and downs there are, Dave is always the one thing where damn it, where I feel completely myself and don't have to worry about censoring anything I say or being misunderstood. And he's my best friend in the world. And it is, I don't know how to put it into words, how great it is to have someone like that in my life. Because I never thought I would, really. Especially as a child and a young teenager. And I would just look at myself in the mirror and I would be like, who is ever going to love you? And then I met Dave many years later. But, yeah. He's gonna give me crap for this. in a good way. Of course. That's another thing. I'm a very emotional person and I cry a lot. And I don't always cry because I'm sad. I cry because I'm happy. I cry because something's beautiful, Yeah. I cry for a variety of reasons. And he has never once acted embarrassed by that. Ever. Whether we're in a theater, in public, no matter where we are, if that happens to me, he has never once ever acted like, oh, here she goes again. And now he doesn't even say anything. He just hands me a tissue. Sometimes he just knows and hands me a tissue before I even start. So, I know how lucky I am to have that. I know. On a daily basis. And so that he is the only place where I feel safe 100%. And to get to come home to that every day is just the best thing.
Yes. Well,
that
Heather,
makes my heart happy. That's you keep that one. I mean, I know you will, but
well, it's been 20 years. I think we're going to stick it out.
Good. I think you're good. I was going to talk about the fact that I've kind of learned over the last, 10 years that I'm fully capable of supporting myself and taking care of me, and I'm strong, resilient woman, and yada, yada, yada. But the real question here is, where do you find that you can be at peace? And, the real answer, and I'm going to try not to cry. I'm surprised I haven't cried yet, but I'm a little emotionally drained.
Join me, Heather, join me.
It's with the Star Trek community. I've talked about this a lot on my Shore Leave podcast, and the fact that, I went to the Star Trek Las Vegas convention in 2009 and was kind of an observer and didn't know anybody. I think I had met my friend Frankie, a couple people off of social media, but didn't know anybody well. And went with my ex-husband. And so it was like an observer. And I could see there was something there, like there was a sense of community there. And I wanted to be a part of that community. I knew immediately. And we went back the next year. And then the next year I was separated and I went by myself, and I had so many people reach out to me and to help me. My friend Frankie, who I met that first year, let me stay with her in her room. And I didn't have to pay for the room. Everyone was supportive, and I have continued to go back year after year. I have made friends across the world. And these are lifelong friendships. And, really because of, now I'm going to cry, because of Star Trek and because of this community, I have been able to find, a personal strength to be able to talk about things like the fact that I was sexually abused for a long time in high school. It's hard to talk about. I didn't really open up about that until that episode of Disco Trek with Laurel and Ash a while back. But I'm able to talk about things like that. I'm able to talk about me as a person. The fact that I really started to better understand and accept my sexuality, for one thing, and that I'm a queer person and I can talk about being a queer person. That's not something that I really ever felt comfortable about before, because I know like my mom loves me, and I always knew that like my mom would be supportive of me, but my family in Kentucky doesn't know, because they're my family in Kentucky, right? So there are things like that I just continue to be able to find strength, and it's because of this wonderful, amazing community. When I go every August to that convention, I know that I can fully be me. I can be my complete, authentic self. And there are so many people that like me, and that think that I'm a good person. And so along with that, I started a podcasting career, and now I get to have a voice. I get to have a voice for people that don't have a voice. And I like to show people that you can be you, because you're all really amazing. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what other people think of you. You as an individual, you're an amazing person. That's a general you. That's like everybody listening. That's you, Brandi, and that's you, Amy. Like, you are all amazing people, and you should be yourself. You can put yourself out there, and when you're ready, if you want to talk about experiences in your life, you can do that. And I've just done it because I felt like it was something that I needed to do, and the feedback that I've gotten from the community has just further propelled me to continue to talk about these very raw things. So, that's why I have no problem talking about the crazy stuff going on in my life today. Because I know that whether or not I ever find out if I've helped someone, I know that I have helped other people. And I know that continuing to do that might inspire others, or just give them the strength, to embrace themselves, love themselves, maybe talk about their pain, feel that it's okay, after 15 years, to realize that your teacher abused you in really terrible ways. And I don't think any of my high school friends listen to my podcast. I hope not. But you know what? That's the risk that I'm willing to take to put myself out there and to put that knowledge out there, because it's an important thing to talk about. And it's really because of Star Trek and because of the people in this community that I've really been able to fully love myself and be myself. So that, yeah, there. I didn't fully cry. I got a little teary, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, I personally think there's absolutely nothing wrong with crying. And anyone who thinks differently can come and fight me. I will take you on. I am a hair puller and I bite.
There is nothing wrong. Again, that's just about being your authentic self. And I think that your emotion is a beautiful, wonderful thing. And, if somebody is offended by someone being emotional, hey guys, it's not your podcast. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. It's our podcast.
There are plenty of other Trek FM episodes to listen to without crying.
Right. That's so true. Well, when I was thinking about where do I find peace, I found it so ironic because it seems in opposition to what my fear is. And when I think, gosh, Amy, where am I at peace? It's when I'm alone. And then I was thinking, well, that's stupid because my greatest fear is being alone. What's going on? This is why I'm alone, because I'm at peace when I'm alone. And part of it, I think I know because it's this logical and because I like being just organized and to have control, not control over others, but over control over my life. Mm-hmm. And so when I'm alone, guess what? It's my choices, my actions, and my consequences. And to me, that makes sense. And when my world makes sense, I'm happy and I'm at peace. And so I think about, am I willing to take the risk of getting into a relationship because I can't control the other person? Well, I refuse to. And no, you can't control anyone else, And so I go back and forth between being in control and being by myself and having the peace that comes with that versus the fear of getting in a relationship, losing control, and having that be chaotic for me.
It's so interesting because what my reasoning was with Saru is that what happened when he found peace was he found control. Exactly. There is no control when you are living your life in fear. Mm-hmm. And, you don't have control over meeting someone. Like that just happens. Yeah, you can put yourself out there. You can go on a dating site, but there's no control over finding that person to have the relationship with. So you're just kind of waiting and wondering. And that's what
I hate.
Yeah. And that's what Saru's life is waiting. And obviously now in Starfleet, he's not being, chased 24 hours a day by whatever predator is out there, that goes after the Kelpians. But that's what his life has been. And so then when he met the Pavins and was kind of had the Pavin energy or the Pavins go through him, I'm still not quite sure how that worked. He found a sense of control there. And then with that control comes empowerment, right? Because we're like, well, what happened? A lot of people thought that he was possessed by the Pavins and that it was going to turn around and we were going to find out that he was temporarily possessed and that wasn't really him. But that was him. That was him feeling control. And that was him being empowered by that control. And so those are definitely two difficult things to come together. And, even now it's like, I get it. I like having control of my life too. And so I don't mind not having a relationship now because I can go back to having that control over what my apartment looks like, stuff like that. But there's still that fear of being alone, too. So, again, it emphasis here on the fact that this character we can all connect with on some level. Like this theme of fear and peace or safety, like you can find a way, even if you don't like Saru, like you can find a way to attach to that theme, because it's something that applies to all of us really at some point in our lives.
Agreed.
I agree. And just speaking from personal experience, Amy, when you find that one person, you won't feel like you're giving up control. You will feel like you have finally become the best person you could possibly be. I would not be who I am without my husband unconditionally loving me and allowing me to figure out who I really was and what I really wanted out of my life. And I had never had anyone do that for me before. Not so completely. So
you give me hope. You hopefully you give both me and Amy hope. That's
there are relationships out there. If I can find it, anybody can. Because I have issues. I have a lot of issues. So, and my husband understands those issues and loves me anyway, or loves me because of them. Who knows? But yeah, when you find that person, it doesn't feel like you're giving up control. It feels like you're gaining more control over who you really are.
I like that. I'm really glad that you found him.
Oh, so am I. The funny thing is that we had the same circle of friends for 2 years before we met.
Wow.
And I just was not in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
And I met him at just the right time in my life.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And I have trust issues big time. I have big time trust issues. So me trusting somebody fully is a really big deal.
Oh, damn you, Brandi.
I'm glad
I'm sorry.
See, Brandi found her Pavin.
Yep.
Yes.
I did. I found my Pavin and he lives with me and it's great.
Well, the last topic I wanted to talk about was sacrifice for your passions. And when I think about characters that exemplify this theme, I immediately think of Lieutenant Stamets and, ironically, Vogue. And we see Vogue sacrifice his safety, like when he wants to go be the torchbearer for Takuma, because he believes so strongly in the teachings of Kahless. Like he is going to sacrifice his own life to be this torchbearer, right? And we see Stamets, whether he was manipulated or not, he is risking his own physical and his mental stability by injecting this tardigrade DNA and making these jumps, to save Discovery. Like, is there anything that you have been so passionate about that you are willing to sacrifice for, Brandi?
There were things that I thought I was willing to sacrifice for, and then it turned out for me the sacrifice was not worth it. I've always wanted to be an actress and a singer, and though I feel like if I really had committed to that, I could, but the amount of time commitment that takes is astounding. Mm-hmm. And even in my younger life, okay, this is a story I haven't told ever to the public, or to anyone outside of my family. Right around the year 2000, I was taking voice lessons, and my voice teacher, who I had known actually for some time because she was my older sister's best friend, and she was married and had 2 kids. That's a whole other story. Turns out she's gay. More power to her for finding out who she is. But she decided she wanted to try to have a music career. And she said, when we sing together, we blend so well. I would really like you to be my partner in this. And so we started working on that. And the hours that she wanted to do this, it was just more and more all the time, over and over and over. And I realize now she was trying to fill a hole that was inside her. And she didn't realize that wasn't what the hole was. It was a different hole than she thought it was. Mm-hmm. And, that realization came down the road. Anyway, things ended badly because I basically just stepped away and said, I miss my husband. I miss being home. I miss having free time. I'm not enjoying this experience, and I don't want to do this anymore. Little did I know she was going around behind my back and telling everybody, like in the studio where we were recording a demo, that I was having mental problems and stuff like that. And I'm just like, here's the funniest part of that story, though. Years later, in fact, it was 2007, the day I was moving in to my house, our house, because it took us 10 years before we actually were able to get into a house. And she called me out of the blue. And she talked to me for a bit, and she says, I know I treated you horribly during this situation, and I took things away from you that you should have had. And I'm just really sorry that I did that. I'm looking back on my behavior, and I'm taking a new path in my life, and I just want you to know that I am so sorry that I did that. And I said, I understand that, and I'm happy to hear from you. I don't hate you. I've long since dealt with that and let it go. I'm glad that, you're on a new path and you are doing what makes you feel better about mistakes you've made in the past. You have nothing to fear from me. I'm happy to still know you. So, and now, and I didn't realize at the time that she had already started down that path of figuring out who she really was. And so when I heard that she had gotten divorced and that she was gay and living with a woman, I'm like, way to go. Way to go. Way to find your path. Good job, Tiffany. You know who you are.
Excellent. Heather, anything that you are passionate about and are willing to sacrifice for?
Oh, man. So I have been incredibly blessed in life to have created a business from nothing that is really wonderfully successful. I have a pet care business. And I've had that business for 10 years, and I make a living and I make comfortable money that I'm happy. I love what I do. Animals have always been my passion. I think I love animals more than people, and I've been accused of that. And I think it's true at the end of the day. But with this job comes a lot of sacrifice, and, I don't get days off unless I plan them. I don't have employees because it's difficult when you're doing a job where you go into people's homes and you're taking care of living animals. You really have to find the right people to trust to help you. And I've found people here and there, and I've had some really negative experiences. And at this point, I kind of just like being responsible for myself, and not having to worry about what someone else is doing in my name. But that comes with the difficulty of, I don't make income when I go on vacation.
Right.
I have to reach out to other people to help take care of my clients when I'm gone. And it really comes back around to the story of my, current relationship ending. That was part of it, is that the holidays are my busy season. And so even though I've always made time to come home on Thanksgiving Day or Christmas Day and spend, the time having the meal or opening gifts or whatnot, that was not enough for him. And he wants a family, and he wants to have a family experience with someone that doesn't have a lifestyle like mine. And that's that. So in some respects, my job is, the sacrifice that I make for my job is just one of this relationship, but that's okay. I'm okay with it, because at the end of the day, again, I get to do something amazing, and I'm extremely proud to be an entrepreneur and to have, literally, I had left a job where I was incredibly unhappy and depressed, and I thought, what do I love? I was like, I love animals, so let's do this. And I made this business that has been successful. I have clients who consider me family. And and I get to pet dogs. I mean, it's not like there's not a lot of glamour. I have to clean up dog accidents, and I get scratched by cats and all that fun stuff. I spend my day in a car. It's not just petting dogs, but for me, what I have to give up to be independent and do this has been worth it. But I think that's a big reason why I kind of made the transition from identifying completely with Burnham now to Stamets, because I can kind of see in myself when we met Stamets and he was kind of like, who are you? Why are you on the ship? Why are you in engineering? Not that I'm that way with people I've tried to hire, but I can be skeptical just because I know that I need to be in control of the quality of work. And if somebody else is there, I'm a little concerned and not necessarily trusting of what's going to happen. I'm just not sure. But when we got to see Stamets in the arboretum or whatever you want to call it, when he was watching the tardigrade commune with the spores and all the plants, you started to really see that passion come through. And especially at the end of the season here, where he is potentially sacrificing his life for this. I'm not doing something quite as extreme, but I just started to really realize that I am so much like him. And frankly, I think at the end of the day, the reason that I enjoy Discovery so much is because I see myself in multiple characters. I see the sacrifices that a lot of these people are making to be on this ship. And so it really resonates with me. And I'll have a day where I'm like, I didn't feel great about this, and I wish the episodes were longer and we got more story. But then when I sit down and talk about it like we're doing now, I'm just like, man, I love this Star Trek. Of course, this is my Star Trek. I see myself in this series. So yeah, I get the sacrifice. I do it every day. I give up a lot to do it. So yeah.
But it's worth it when it's your passion, right?
It's worth it when it's your passion, when you are blessed to do something that you love, that you don't really get burnt out. I mean, yes, I get tired of driving all the time and working every day. But my job is loving animals. I can't complain about that. And I'm not ever going to give up my job for somebody else. And so whomever I meet in the future is just going to have to come along for that ride. And hopefully I'll find somebody that's supportive, and that says, oh, you want to take off Christmas? Okay, I'll cover the rent for Christmas so you can take a break. That would be great.
Yeah.
Somebody supportive like that. So
yeah, it was funny. I was talking with a friend who has a kid in college, and was like, and I was talking to the kid, and it's like, oh, well, what are you going to do? What are you studying? And, oh, I don't know. And my friend was like, find something that you're passionate about. And I'm like, that's the best advice. I mean, for me, my passion is teaching, and I love it. And it's so stupid because I have to sacrifice making money, but
kidding, not kidding.
There's been times when the district has asked me to move up to, teaching teachers, and the district says, come on up and let's, take a district job, pull me out of the classroom. Or my master's degree was in counseling. And, well, why don't you be a counselor? Well, that takes me out of the classroom. And there's been these opportunities, and I say opportunities because they have been. I would have gotten more respect in the district and what have you, and more respect in the school. But again, it takes me out of the classroom, and I'm just not ready to leave these stinking kids. I just love them. And every year I'm like, I can't love these kids anymore. And yet they come into my heart. I'm like, I'm teaching. I feel that what I do is valuable. And I know everyone says, oh, what do you teach? Oh, I teach math. Oh, that was my worst subject. I get it. But I still feel like that I'm doing a service and that these kids need it. And so for me, just hanging on to that is what's keeping me through all the crap that education is going through right now. Those kids are what gives me the passion and why I get up at 4:30 in the morning every single day to go and teach these kids this math. I mean, and I'm passionate about math too. So I found two things that I'm very passionate. And so I sacrifice. Yes, I go to bed early and I wake up very early. Like to me, it's just worth it. And it sucks. I wish that I could be financially successful. I wish that, I could do all these other things that people have and, but I'm going to sacrifice because I feel what I do makes a difference. And what I get in return from those kids is it fills me. It fills my soul.
Are you also an INFJ?
I'm a ISTJ.
So there's that, I don't know the Myers-Briggs like super well, but you've got the I and you've got the J.
Yes.
Somewhere in there, we are people that like to help others, and take care of others and serve others. And I was happy being a waitress, guys, because that's a job where you are serving others. And I care for animals and not people, but I totally get it. And I don't watch a child excel in math. I can imagine how rewarding that may be, or just even if they suck at math, you're still invested because they're children, right? Yeah. And your heart, I know, I'm going to cry again. You're just such a wonderful person that I know that you're making an impact on those kids. And like, I know that my interactions with my clients, the way that I kind of make my business focused on having an intimate connection, is something special, and you get a lot in return. Like, we give a lot and we sacrifice a lot to get enough back that's what makes us happy. And so we don't have to make tons of money. Yeah. Like, we just don't need those things in our lives. And I'm just having I'm like blowing my own mind here, because like that's something that I've dealt with in this relationship is being told I need to expand my business and grow my business, and there's something wrong with me if I don't want to do that. And that's not true at all. Right. I excel at what I do, and I'm happy doing what I do. And as long as I'm happy, that's what matters. Yeah. And I just have to say, major respect for being a teacher. It's something I can never do. My grandmother was a teacher. My cousin is a teacher. My other cousin, I've got a lot of teachers in my family. Teachers change lives. They've changed my life. The good teachers, not the very bad teacher. Yeah. It is one of the most sacrificing professions out there, and you are an amazing person for doing it.
Thank you.
Agree.
Thank you.
Oh, I think I should clarify one thing. I didn't give up my passion because of my husband.
Okay.
Because I found a different way to channel that passion, because I discovered improv comedy. Oh. And my husband has been incorporated into that. We have a two-person comedy team, and we call ourselves Brave and Dandy.
Love it.
Nice.
And we are very well received at our local improv hub here in Ogden. And in fact, we have a monthly gig now. So I found that way to have time to still do other things, but yet get this performance thing that's in my blood out there. Even if it's a smaller audience, I don't care.
It doesn't matter. Now you're doing your passion with the person you're passionate about.
I know, it's the perfect thing.
Yes.
That's amazing. Like that's so important, is to find partners who if they can't join us in our passion, they support our passion.
Yes.
So yeah, good stuff. Good stuff all around. I like this conversation.
Yeah.
Well, it is going on. Our poor listeners. No, our lucky listeners. We are going to wrap up, but I was just real curious. Have you seen these themes in other Star Trek iterations in other shows, series. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Brandi?
Well, I immediately thought of my first favorite character in Star Trek, which was Spock. And I thought of, and this actually doesn't happen until the motion picture, which I don't care what anyone says. I do like that movie. And I do watch it.
It's good movie.
It's a good movie. And I saw it as a child, and I grew up with TOS, of course, but I saw it as a child and I was never once bored. And people are like, oh, well, this scene goes on too long and this scene goes on too long. I'm like, I never felt that way. But anyway, Spock basically, he sacrificed his father's approval to go into Starfleet because, as we now know from Discovery, Sarek had sacrificed Michael so that Spock could join the Science Collective, whatever it was called. I can't remember.
Science
Exploration.
Academy. Yeah.
Science Academy, Exploration, etc. And that's not what he wanted to do. And he followed his passion and sacrificed his father's approval. And that was a bone of contention between them for decades. Decades and decades and decades. And even after that, even after he left Starfleet and went back to Vulcan and decided he was going to study to become, worthy of Kolinar, and at the last minute, he actually turns Kolinar down. Because, he says it's because he sensed V'ger. But I don't think that's the entire story. My personal feeling is that, yes, he did sense V'ger. He sensed what was coming, and he knew that he could help his friends. Because he could have gone many places. He could have just gone back to Earth and gone to Starfleet Academy and talked to them there. No, he went directly to the Enterprise because that's where his friends were. And so he sacrificed what he thought he wanted to go and help his friends. And that's the way I'm always going to look at it. People can argue with me if they want, but it's all about perception and opinion, and nobody's really right or wrong.
Yeah.
I had left this question blank because I when I was doing my notes, I couldn't think of specific characters, and I think this all happened for a good reason here. We're talking about sacrificing for your passions. I think a lot about our captains across the series, and when I really think about it more, I think that our captains deal with all of these themes. You don't have to be a Vulcan to be logical. And I think that every single captain has struggled with logic versus emotion. I mean, you have a ship full of people that you love and care about, and you don't want to put their lives at risk. And sometimes you have to put their lives at risk. So I think that's a choice that every captain has to struggle with. The power and manipulation, our captains really aren't manipulators, but man, if there is a master manipulator, I think that Q would be him. So I think about, Picard's struggle with Q across the TNG series. And if I had more time, I'd find out others there. I think all of our captains have dealt with villains who are manipulative, throughout the series. Man, fear versus peace and safety. I mean, that's the question, right? Are we going to keep our crew safe? Are we going to go somewhere? I mean, you're lost in the Delta Quadrant. That's a really scary thing. How are we going to get that back? And yet, despite, Voyager being lost for so long, they were still able to find ways to come together, and keep a peace. Like, they weren't freaking out for 7 seasons, just a few. And then, sacrifice for your passions. Every captain sacrifices, Captain Kirk, the Enterprise was his lady. And even Archer, I would say, that the ship was his lady as well. He didn't really have relationships. He didn't have a choice, as he says very often. I think every captain makes sacrifices, to be a captain. And what I'm liking here is that I'm kind of feeling like these days I'm my own captain again. And I'm Tilly one day will be a captain. I think I'm reaching the captain level, so I'm above Tilly only in that respect. I'm still waiting to see Tilly as captain someday. I hope that we see it in the second half of the season. But yeah, I think that all of these themes are just a great way to link Star Trek together. Every series has had them. That's how I see them. I think I'll make a pretty good captain someday.
Yes.
I know you will. I know you will.
Well, these are just some of the themes that I thought of just off the top of my head, but I'm sure there might be some others that are prevalent throughout the 9 episodes. And listeners, we would love to hear if you recognized any more themes. Was there any others? I had another one. Actually, you talked about Tilly. Like, I felt from her character, like she has this innocence and ambition. Like, you don't really see that too often, but yet is so important, Brandi, Heather, did you see any other themes that just in passing?
Well, there's something that has been prevalent and obvious to me in every iteration of Star Trek that we've seen on screen. And that is this indomitable sense of camaraderie. Mm-hmm. Because even if a crew starts out not knowing each other, because with TOS, the crew knew each other. They'd been working together for a while, so we were kind of thrown into the middle of their story. But with Next Generation, we got to watch that crew come together. With Deep Space Nine, we got to watch that crew come together. Voyager, watch that crew come together. Enterprise, all of those things. We got to watch those crews come together, and Discovery is no different. Now, they did the whole TOS thing with showing us the Shenzhou in the first 2 episodes and that crew that had been working together for a long time. And then they destroyed it. And that was shocking. And I love that it was shocking. Oh, I love it when things surprise me, because it's so hard to do these days. And so you thrust Michael into this new situation, and the crew of the Discovery at first doesn't seem like the most working together sort of crew. They seem a bit disjointed, but as the series progresses, I mean, by episode like 5 or 6, that they have each other's backs. That camaraderie has formed, and that they are a working, functioning family on that ship. And I love it.
That's a great theme.
Yeah, and I've got like the perfect thing to tie into it. So one of my favorite themes across the board is that of communication.
Oh, yes.
Star Trek is just such an amazing example of what we can be when we communicate with each other. Like, people don't know how to communicate. I am guilty of it. I was in a marriage for 8 years and I didn't communicate the whole time because I never learned how. And it's one thing that I'm taking away from this recent one, is that I did start to learn how to communicate. And when I watch Star Trek, I always look out for the scenes in which that happens, and it's in Discovery. And so that was one of the things where I pointed out right away. I'm like, again, they are showing that people come together, they apologize, especially between Saru and Burnham. Mm-hmm. There's been a lot of communication there because there was a rift, and Georgiou and Burnham. There's just. I love it. And I wish that everybody, like Star Trek was mandatory viewing for the population so that you can see that, when you're upset about something, you should go talk to the person you're upset with. And it's safe to do that, because that's another thing that Star Trek shows us. And I know it's not always safe, and we don't live in a Star Trek world. And so a lot of people are afraid to communicate, but I just really love that Star Trek is just this shining example of at least showing us that it can be done. And Discovery has done a really excellent job of bringing that in as well.
Oh my gosh, we could do a whole nother show with these themes.
We might have to.
Yes.
Oh my, see, we love Star Trek, and it's these themes that, connect to us and make personal, relationships so much better because of what we learn about others and what we learn about ourselves.
Yes.
Wow.
Absolutely.
It has been fun talking about themes in Discovery today, but it isn't the only thing we've been discussing on the network. So here's a quick look at some of the other things you may have missed elsewhere on Trek FM.
Previously on Trek.fm, Standard Orbit.
Fan consensus has sort of said, look, third season is terrible and awful and woeful, and a lot of it is. But you go back and you watch it, and there's a lot of it that carries over. Like, there's a lot of stuff that is, I think of like as quintessentially Star Trek. That sort of you see develop over the course of the third season.
The 602 Club.
There was a lot of screaming involved. I'll start with, you know what I'm talking about.
Snowball! 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 Yes. No, I know what you mean.
No,
I did
a lot
too.
of, oh my God, it's a Demogorgon.
Warp 5.
He had to learn to not interfere, and it's painful, and that's what makes it such a powerful episode. So this is definitely a see it. Okay, next.
All right. Sleeping dogs. While exploring a gas.
Skip it.
Okay. All right. So Shadows of I think we already know what this one is.
keep going with the sleeping dogs.
The Edge, a Star Trek Discovery podcast.
It's like when Tyler was, explaining the situation and seeing it, and he was explaining it to Tyler, it's like he was almost apologizing for it. Like, I had to do this to save my life, and I'm still alive because I did this. But is he suffering guilt for that?
And that's what else is happening on Trek.fm.
And since I have Brandi here, host of Live from the Edge, I'm going to ask that you help me out. Brandi, close us out.
Of course. Well, let me do that thing. So check out all of these shows and join the conversation about your favorite corner of the Star Trek universe and beyond. You'll find us wherever you get your podcasts. And here is the list. Here's the rundown, guys. If you're an Apple user, be sure to hit the subscribe button in Apple Podcasts on iPhone, iPad, Apple TV, or the desktop iTunes app to get the latest episodes as soon as they are published. And please, pretty please, you know you want to, leave us a star rating and written review. Thank you. If you're not an Apple user, we totally got your backs. You can find our shows on Google Play Music, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spreaker, SoundCloud, Windows Phone, in most third-party apps. And you can stream and download the MP3 file from our website or grab that RSS link.
And how am I going to follow that? Oh my goodness. Well, we would love to hear your thoughts on today's show. And there's so many ways for you to do that. Best place is to join the larger conversation in the Babel Conference. That's our listeners group on Facebook. Just type Babel, B-A-B-E-L, into the search field on Facebook, and it should come right up. Now, other ways, please, you can send us an email too. Just go to the website at trek.fm/contact. Choose to send to a show and select The Edge, because that's what you're listening to. That will come right to us. You can also contact us on Twitter at TrekFM and on Facebook.com/TrekFM. So, Brandi, where can people find you to talk about your places of peace?
Well, of course, you can find me wandering around in the Babel Conference, where people will love to disagree with me on things, and that's fine. It does not bother me in the least. I like healthy discussion. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
I also have a podcast with my lovely husband, Dave, that is called The Dark Corner Podcast, where we look at the world and pop culture specifically through a darker lens. And I'm a lot more loose with the colorful metaphors on that one, so it is not for children. But if you want to hear two best friends who have known each other a really long time talk about stuff the way we see it, there you go. You can find it on the Strange and Deadly Network, strangeanddeadly.com, or you can find us on iTunes or any other place where you can normally get podcasts. So, Heather, where can our listeners find you to get a logical response?
Well, sometimes I'm in the Babel conference. When I'm not there, I moderate the unofficial Star Trek Las Vegas convention group, where I hope everyone will join me. That's on Facebook. Twitter, I am LLA Posper. And then I am over at the tricordertransmissions.com. My shows are Shore Leave and Disco Trek on Twitter, Tricorder Show, Shore Leave, and Disco_Trek. Good luck, and I welcome the interaction.
Heather, I don't know how many times I've listened to you say your Twitter, and I follow you on Twitter, and I just got it. LLA.
Yeah, I have the tattoo on my back. I have a Delta shield with the paw print in the middle, and the text beneath says "Live long and prosper."
See, I needed the context of what you do for a living, because I understood the LLAP, but I'm like, what is prosper? What is that? And now it connected.
Yep. I love it. Yep. That was my first tattoo, and I've got 10 or 9 more. But yeah,
that's so funny.
Yeah.
I'm a little slow, obviously.
No, you're not. No, you're fine. So, Amy, where can people find you to talk about these laws of power?
Well, you can find me here on the network. With my favorite series, get to host Earl Grey, and that's all about Next Generation, my favorite. And when Discovery's back on, I do the postcards from the Edge, and you can find me on Twitter at Miss Amy Nelson. But my favorite place is on the Babel Conference. I love our listeners. I love the hosts of the network. It's awesome.
It is awesome. And if you'd like to help us keep all our shows coming to you each week, you can become a patron of the network on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/TrekFM. That's patreon.com/TrekFM to get all the details. And perks include early access to episodes, exclusive content, producer credits, and more, available through our special patrons website, Patron Zone. It requires a great deal of money to produce, host, and distribute these shows every month, and we really appreciate any support you can give us and hope you will join the team. Again, you'll find all the details at patreon.com/TrekFM.
And we want to take this moment and recognize and throw flowers and bow down to our associate producers.
We're not worthy.
That would be Norman Lau. We love you. Tony Robinson. We love you. Lisa Slack.
Yeah.
Lisa, send us another email. I miss you.
I love your emails, Lisa.
Shoaib Mirza. We love your comments on the Babel Conference. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Michael Rutledge, thank you so much for supporting The Edge and Trek FM. Brandi, Heather, really am honored that you came on the show, helping us to talk about these important themes and how they connect to our real lives. I'm so grateful to have you. It's been such a wonderful conversation. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Oh, sorry.
It's my honor. No, I was just saying it's my honor to be here. I mean, I felt very honored to be asked. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm proud to have a girl power episode or a woman power, whatever you want to call it.
We can call ourselves girls if we want to. It's our word now.
This is true. It's been great. I've enjoyed it. I think this is a great example of how the Star Trek community produces really great friendships and really great podcasts.
Yeah.
True.
Well, I want to let our listeners know you guys aren't off the hook quite yet with me. We're going to be back in 2 weeks to discuss some of the social themes that we have seen in Discovery. Looking forward to that one.
I hopefully will not cry during that one, but no promises.
So join us next week for another episode of The Edge.